Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Some serious bombshells coming out of the second day of testing in Bahrain. Major teams having problems, including Mercedes. Aston Martin 4 seconds off the pace according to Lance Stroll. But Max Verstappen, arguably the star of yesterday on day one in that Red Bull RB22, says these regulations are terrible. They're anti-racing, they're terrible to drive, it's Formula E on steroids, it eroded all of what made Formula 1 from a driving perspective. What does this mean for this season and for the future? Very much to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. There was a lot to get into today. We're going to start here just on this Red Bull Racing power unit, Red Bull powertrains. Verstappen yesterday was topping the top speed charts by an absolute mile. He was at 344. Now, yes, did he say, and is he probably right, other teams are holding back in terms of power right now, especially with this ongoing politics about the compression ratio, which we will also come on to in the coming minutes because there's an update there as well, quite possibly. But there is a feeling that Red Bull's ability to deploy power and regenerate power consistently over the course of a lap and over the course of a Grand Prix, because the battery has a certain amount of energy which it can be charged up to, but you actually can't charge all of it over a single lap. There are limits in terms of the megajoules and all of this complicated stuff that is not making many of the drivers particularly happy. The point is, over a single lap, it might not be a massive deal, but over a Grand Prix distance, if Red Bull are able to consistently generate more power, they will deliver far higher top speeds than anyone else can. And what's interesting is that Max, the only man close to Max, was Lindblad in the Racing Bulls with the same power unit. Now, part of this might be down to Verstappen really, I wouldn't say pioneering, but being the first driver to really experiment with the driving style we believe might be most effective with these cars. Now, Red Bull were talking about this for years. They were very adamant that these regulations were going to be awful because, obviously, Max hasn't disagreed with that opinion having actually driven the car, because the theory went you'd get to the end of the straight in Monza, you'd have run out of power, you'd have to downshift. Red Bull clearly were aware and prepared, as other teams will have been as well, that downshifting and running higher revs in certain conditions can actually use more of the ICE, the combustion engine, to drive electrical charge. That is going to be a key strategy this year, and Red Bull, it seems, are quite well prepared for it. Max was basically the only driver yesterday to be going through turn 10 in first gear. He was very heavily downshifting, using a bit of engine braking, but also bringing more revs and using more fuel to generate more electrical power for the MG UK. Now, that is definitely unorthodox to drive, and Max isn't very happy about it, but it does seem like that was giving him and Red Bull a major advantage. Now, Red Bull's advantage here might not necessarily be, if it is one at all, in the MG UK, but mainly that they may have designed the engine to withstand this type of beating, and the gearbox and all the other respective components other manufacturers may not have done. So Max will drive the car as fast as he possibly can, and it seems that he has been very early to adopt the type of driving style that will involve, and he's not very happy about what that is at all. But he's one of the first, it seems, to really get there and to deal with the instability that such mega downshifting creates, and maybe Red Bull's advantage, if there is one, and we don't know where the engine manufacturers currently sit, but if there is one, it might be because they're simply better prepared to accommodate for that type of driving style than the other teams are able to do. Many of the other drivers are still driving maybe more traditionally, but a lot of drivers today were stepping down to first gear for that turn 10. We saw the other drivers experiment, so I do wonder, after maybe day one, they were like, okay, yeah, this isn't too bad, but after day two, having tried the Verstappen tactics, which were clearly resulting in a lot of extra juice for him to use at the end of the straight based on what we saw on the top speeds, there might seriously be something in this. So we're going to get back to that in a second. Before we get there, some comments on Ferrari. In Barcelona, Ocon did 150 laps. Today, Ferrari again lapping flawlessly with their cars, dropping the fastest lap time of the day as well. Not a clean day for Red Bull today, not a clean day for Mercedes, among others. Ferrari do seem reasonably, could be too early to say, well positioned. Their car might be fast, it might not be, we don't really know. But the reliability so far has been very strong. Even Mercedes today had reliability problems hit their team in a major way, as we shall discuss. So Ferrari, we're not going to discuss them massively today because they're not the key talking points, but if there is a team that's going a little bit under the radar right now in terms of their performance and efficiency, given that there's so many other storylines currently doing the rounds. Ferrari, definitely a team to watch. And again, I do think that the results at Ferrari this season will come down to which of Hamilton or Leclerc adapts better to what is going to be a radically different type of driving. There's a feeling that last year, the cars were faster if you drove them at, 99% of their capability. If you pushed all the way and too far, you would destabilize the car, you would create instability in the floor, you would lose a bit of downforce, the car wouldn't do what you wanted it to do. This year, you can take that figure and you can ramp it severely down several notches, certainly in terms of engine deployment. If you push these cars too fast, you will go way slower. And I don't know if that's good for the drivers, and, well, it's not good for the drivers. I don't think it's good for the fans either. Let's get into it. Aston Martin. This is their cooling louvre at the back of the car. It's absolutely massive, but it's still apparently nowhere near enough. Today was a real judgment day for Aston Martin, and they've finally, woken up and smelt the coffee that, yeah, this is going to be a long year, to say the very least. Now, Red Bull, they were gearing their car in such a way that at top speed of about 344, they were running at 12,000 RPM, whereas the Aston Martin was down at 11,000, 10,800 when they were reaching their top speed, about 315. That's all Alonso really got to, 318, 315. They wanted to kind of allow the car to stretch its legs a little bit, but when they did, they ran into problems. And, well, we can see some of the reaction here. Not a lot of many happy faces coming out of the Aston Martin garage. The car is slow. It's far from where they wanted it to be. Alonso's angry. Apparently, he got out of the car and slammed his gloves on the ground at one point. That was spotted by some. Actually, yeah, this is Antonio Lobato reports that he threw his gloves after getting out of the car. They're nowhere near where they wanted to be. Alonso doesn't look especially happy. Alonso said the other day, if they can start out the season in the points, they're confident they can become a winning team, maybe a championship winning team this season. It looks like right now, they are fighting way off the pace. The car aerodynamically, it appears to be heavier than we understand. Aerodynamically, there are a lot of fascinating features and possibly very good features. The problem fundamentally is on the engine side. There's a feeling that they're 4 seconds off the pace. 4.5, 4 seconds off the pace. That's what Lance Stroll said. You don't know where the other guys are, but based on their lap times today, Leclerc in the 134s, Alonso in the 138s, right? So it's a 4-second delta, and reportedly a vast chunk of that is coming from the engine. Honda are not the same Honda that have been working with Red Bull and Newey for the last few years. They lost a lot of staff. When they were set to leave Formula 1, everyone left. And then they decided, okay, no, we're going to spin up the project again. But lots of those guys now working for Red Bull Powertrains or some other engine manufacturer. So they had to spin things up again, kind of from scratch. There was a feeling that Honda were not going to be especially well positioned. That is currently how it appears, to say the very least. The problems at Aston Martin are no surprise. Honda is very far behind. They're talking about 3 seconds of engine deficit due to a precautionary but necessary power reduction. That ain't great. Now, part of that, maybe a large part of it, comes down to the packaging. Adrian Newey cannot help himself. He will not compromise on an incredibly tightly packaged cooling arrangement of the car. Is that a mistake? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on your opinion. Definitely Newey and the team took some risk with how small the side pods are, how tightly packaged they are with the massive undercut that they have, the inlets being relatively small and somewhat vertical. Lots of fascinating features on it, but it was always going to be a problem from a cooling perspective. Newey accepts and understands that. Maybe there's an argument that they could have been less aggressive in that domain and let the engine breathe a little bit more. But it appears that Newey's approach is no, we will take the maximum possible risk in this regard, and we will make sure Honda find a way to figure it out so we can gain the advantages that that does offer. The problem is it offers no advantage if you can't run the engine at maximum whack, and that is where they currently find themselves. So, there is going to be this debate, isn't there? Because Newey's clearly promoted this philosophy, but on the other hand, because he has sole decision-making power within the team and there's maybe nobody else saying, all right, Adrian, we might want to just push back on this a little bit so we can actually allow the engine to cool itself down, there's obviously two sides to this. It does appear that the majority of the problem is on the Honda side, but it also appears quite clear that the chassis design has had consequences in this regard. Lance Stroll takes note from Lewis Hamilton and says, at least the weather's nice, it's better than it is back in the UK, and the livery looks pretty good. So, an absolute nightmare. It might not be the worst, right? That's the discussion by the race. Yeah, it doesn't look good, the AMR 26. They've got another 4 days of testing, once tomorrow and twice next weekend, to figure this out. But it doesn't mean they're the worst car. Others are also not excellent. They have their own problems. I think this was probably turn 10, tons of lockups into turn 10. Apparently Perez locked up the Cadillac and went 100 meters in a straight line. So not all the cars are looking good by any means. This was Fernando Alonso walking out of today's test, and yeah, he doesn't look especially happy. So lots of work to do at Aston Martin. Not a smooth day, as I say, elsewhere either. Isaac Hadjar was in the garage all of the morning because there was a hydraulic leak on the RB22. So not engine related, but they had a chassis problem. That took the whole morning to resolve. He got done, I think, 1 lap in the end in the morning session, just a quick installation lap. These were the times, actually. Leclerc, fastest lap time of the day and the morning session. 62 laps with a 1:34.2. Norris was half a tenth behind. Nobody else was anywhere near close. Antonelli did only 3 laps to Hadjar's 1 because they had an engine problem. And we've not seen this so far for Mercedes. They ran absolutely flawlessly in Barcelona. Toto Wolff said yesterday that they've got to get their act together. They turn up the next day and their engine doesn't work. So, yeah, not a good time for Mercedes right now. Now, again, people are going to say, and I do hear it, oh, colour me shocked. All of a sudden, Mercedes are going to get their compression ratio trick taken away and their engine is going to get nerfed. And now they're running into issues and now they look slow. It's like, is it just a bit too much of a coincidence, right? And I buy into that theory to a certain extent. I think the Mercedes would have preferred to run on track today, obviously. But it does feel a little coincidental that everything looked super smooth and perfect in Barcelona. They've turned up to Bahrain. Their engine is under the microscope more so than ever. Looks like changes are going to be made. And all of a sudden, all the talking points are around Ferrari's reliability, is around Red Bull powertrains, electrical efficiency, and all that. They're going to be the best engine. They're the benchmark and all this stuff. So, look, there are politics in Formula One. Take it as you will. I'll also just quickly throw out there, we did discuss over the last few days, what about the fuels that these cars are running? In Barcelona, we believe they were all running pretty much on the older fuels, 2025 fuels, or some sort of hybrid version, certainly not the new sustainable fuels that they're going to be using for this year. So is that why we're seeing some more issues? Maybe, maybe not. Other Mercedes power teams, they've been okay, so it doesn't seem to be a major issue. But it did cost Antonelli his whole morning session. They got 3 laps done, they detected an issue with the power unit, and they decided their only option was to do a full change. And they eventually got it changed. They got out back on track again with, I think, George Russell in the car this time, but it was far from a smooth day for Mercedes. So yes, those were the morning times. Let's talk about this power unit drama. Because again, is there something going on here? Are there politics at play? Carlos Sainz and Williams. Now, just let's keep in mind, James Vowles, top man at Williams, he chose to be a Mercedes engine partner. He worked with Mercedes for some time. He mentioned to Ted Kravitz on the notebook that he knows that Mercedes do a great job pushing the limits in every single regard. Carlos Sainz, though, comments on the top speed that Max had on the first day. Whatever Red Bull Ford powertrains were doing yesterday was a clear step ahead of everyone else. Not only a small step, a clear step. It was mighty impressive. James Vowles says 0.6. That's the amount that Max was gaining. Now, as I say, part of that might be his own driving style, and other drivers need to catch on to that. But part of it might just be the advantage of the engine. The Red Bull from scratch is built on an entirely new program to deliver it, be reliable and deliver performance. They have achieved all of that. Their speed into turn 1 is mighty impressive, says James Vowles. So again, is this all part of this major politics game where James Vowles is trying to make sure that Mercedes engine doesn't get nerfed? Possibly. However, we did have an update on that today, because it looks like the rules are going to get changed. The question is, when are they going to get changed? And we don't have an answer to that just yet. There has been lots of talk about this. Mercedes have obviously done something clever with their engine. They're gaining some extra performance as far as we understand. Is it a level playing field to rule that out, or is that discouraging innovation? I think back in the day, they probably would have said, you got us. Next year, we'll cancel it out. This year, you can enjoy the advantage that you maybe rightfully earned by reading the rules cleverly, whatever. It feels like nowadays they're less keen to do that, and according to Autoracer, an imminent vote on this solution is not only possible, but it's probable because Red Bull have now changed their minds. They are also anti-Mercedes. The question no longer seems whether there will be an adjustment, but when. And that is the crucial component of this conversation. Because while Toto Wolff may be saying publicly, we'll accept the decision of the FIA, we will not be opposing it in any way, whatever happens, there have been some reports from Blick that Mercedes says, well, if you change it, we ain't turning up. We're going on strike. We're boycotting the first race. And I was kind of expecting this of Mercedes, right? We're only a few weeks away from Melbourne. They should probably say, if they're doing this right, they should say, well, if you're going to force us to change the engine, that's going to take us at least 3, 4, 5 months or whatever. And I don't know, it's an interesting conversation, but if you are going to outlaw what Mercedes are doing, you might argue that Mercedes should have some sort of recourse to at least give them time to change it or whatever the case is. The latest development that we have, according to F1 Techie here, is that they actually did a test. They did a check on Mercedes engine, but hot idle. So presumably you run the car, you turn it off, you test it, and then you test it near enough those conditions. Apparently, they passed the test, effectively. And this is actually what he was discussing the other day, is that it wouldn't be a massive surprise. These engineers are smart, right? They may well have predicted, okay, maybe they change the test and they make it so it's tested at hot temperatures rather than ambient. So can we make it so that it only increases compression when the engine is running? Possibly, possibly not. The bottom line is, it appears Mercedes have kind of gotten away with it. F1 Techie says that yes, they are going to change it, but it's almost certainly going to be done for 2027, and Mercedes will be able to exploit this advantage with their customer teams for this year. The arguments on this go either way. There's some that say it's going to change right now. Others, like this, say that it's going to change next year. The point is that over the last couple of days, Mercedes haven't looked all that. So there is a logic to saying, oh, well, yeah, fine, Toto, do what you like. Next year, we're going to change the rules. And I don't think Mercedes would be too mad about that if they were changing them next year. This year, a different conversation. These, as Formula Director puts together, were the numbers on day 2. Mercedes only got 57 laps in, based on the afternoon session basically alone. So they're the second fewest laps of anyone, outside of Aston Martin, who did 98. Not an especially pretty 98. Red Bull only got 87 in after what we saw. Alpine at 97. Ferrari, though, right up there again. McLaren did near enough 150. Williams, they're topping the numbers right now. They need it. They're doing very well. And Mercedes still have the most laps of anyone, but I think Ferrari particularly impressive. Red Bull basically the same as yesterday at 133 with Racing Bulls today. Audi reasonably reliable as well, although their car's definitely different to many of the other ones. So these were the final standings of the day. It was Ollie Behrman's Haas into third place, George Russell just behind that, then Hadjar. Again, the times aren't especially relevant today, but it was Charles Leclerc, as I say, Ferrari going somewhat under the radar, one might argue right now. But the big drama to close out the video is what Max Verstappen had to say after yesterday, of course, and how he's felt about these regulations so far. Hamilton was not especially happy with things after yesterday, says, the lowest grip that I've really ever felt. But that wasn't the main talking point. His main discussion was, these feel like GP2 cars, they don't have the speed, but also doing lift and coast for 600 meters so you can recharge the massive battery is not what racing is about. Now, we've seen some overtakes on track so far, and of course, they're not going to be massive dive bomb overtakes down the inside. But the overtakes we have seen have been basically, that guy's got more energy, he presses the button harder, and he goes past with no questions asked. And we're seeing quite a lot of that already. And I think the frustration for me is the drivers don't like this, and for the fans, we have no idea what's happening on the screen at any moment. Does that guy have more energy than that guy? Does that mean, with DRS is obvious. If he opens the DRS flap, you can see he's going to get some extra speed. In this case, they've all got DRS, they've all got active aero, activating all the time. So if one guy flies past the other, okay, obviously he had extra energy. How did he earn that energy? What did he do to generate that energy? Does that mean that he's going to have less energy for the next corner, or does it not? We don't know. None of that is clear at all. It's going to be really weird to watch the racing, because it's going to be difficult to follow who's got the advantage and who hasn't. So John Noble says they just finished an astonishing press conference with Max, and he said a few things, such as, this isn't Formula 1, this is Formula E on steroids. I do not enjoy driving these cars. That is the feeling, that you cannot push these cars really anywhere near the limit at all. Tony Sokolov was saying, the fastest way to drive these cars and engines is to drive at 85%, 90%. As I say, back in the day, F1, every race would be absolute balls to the wall every lap. Then in the tyre management era, the energy management era that we've kind of just gone through, that changed, but not super radically. At least in qualifying, it was always balls to the wall. But now, that looks like even that is going to change. Lift and coast in qualifying, and blimey, certainly lift and coast in the race. This is what Max says in full. In terms of driving, not so much fun. At the same time, I know it's a stake for the team. I'm going to give it my all. You know, our engine, I see the enthusiasm in the people, but I'm not enthusiastic about the driving. And yeah, a nice car is nice, a good car is nice, but for me that doesn't even matter. It has to be fun to drive. At this stage of my career, I'm also busy with other things outside of F1 that I enjoy. I know we're stuck with these regulations for the time being. We shall see. So this is a bombshell comment to Max, right? And this is one of the reasons why Max is, you know, I love it that Max just he will say whatever he likes. This is probably one of the reasons why they wanted the Barcelona test to be behind closed doors, so such comments didn't seep out to the public. But Max is anti-racing. That was the other comment, right? Anti-racing in terms of what they promote. And I think that there's going to be so much thought and complexity. And that was one of Hamilton's criticisms on the electrical deployments that, you know, there's probably not going to be as much time to really think about how you race the other guy. It's almost like you're not racing anyone else. You're racing against the clock. You're racing against your car's ability to manage the energy. You're not even thinking about the other cars. And if you do it better than the other guy, you will just breeze past him on the straight with no issue. It might not get to that extreme, but Max is pretty clear here, and I'm sure that Toto doesn't like to hear it, that this is not good at all. And Max last year said, my contract runs until 28, but that will depend on whether the rules are nice and whether they're fun. And well, we now know Max's first perspective on that. Max apparently also said, according to Sam Collins, that the other manufacturers are hiding performance, so he does think there's a bit of sandbagging going on. In fact, it seems Max's full comments were as follows. Let me tell you something, wait for Melbourne and see how much power Mercedes really have. I already know. So, you know, maybe he's been having some conversations in private with Toto Wolff. Like, there's so many unknowns right now, but Max goes on to say this about participating in the Nürburgring. Looking at it now, at least you can drive flat out there without looking after my battery. I want to do it. We are working to make it happen. I can't confirm it yet. That's where we're going to leave it for today. Fascinated to hear your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below. Some major developments over these last 48 hours, for good and certainly for bad, maybe for ugly as well when the season gets underway. So thanks for watching, take care of yourself. Thanks for 90,000 subs as well. We hit that milestone yesterday, massively appreciated. Well on the road now to 100k, the final big milestone before it. Take care, and I'll see you next time.